Hello, this is Megan.
And this is Mark.
Welcome to our 23rd video of the Star Wars Galaxy's Edge construction at Disneyland. May the 4th be with you.
First of all, if we look inside the docking bay of the Battle Escape show building, a worker is using a scissor lift to transport a duct segment to the ceiling. Notice that this segment is transition ductwork, from round to rectangular. Round HVAC ducts are definitely the more common type of ductwork, and not without reason. They create better, more efficient airflow because there is less surface area to resist the flow and alter temperatures. And round ducts produce less noise pollution as well. However, sometimes it's necessary to transition to rectangular ducts whenever you got a tight space that won't allow for the height of round ducts. Next, if we look at the top of the Millennium Falcon show building, we can see that a new beam structure is in place. Let's look at the model and see what this will look like once it's completed. Now, if we look on the other side of the building, we have a view of one of the new side structures that is being made. We'll get a closer look. This is the same structure that we viewed last week from Big Thunder Mountain Railroad. Next, we'll go on Big Thunder Mountain Railroad to see what has changed from that perspective. In the distance, we can see quite a difference in the amount of mesh forms that have been put up. Here's what it looked like last week, and the top portion of the Millennium Falcon show building can be seen. I'll dissolve the picture back to what it looks like now. From this perspective, the building is completely covered with mesh forms. It's amazing how fast they installed them. It is really coming along. Now we're on Big Thunder Trail, and we'll look to the left. Workers are putting a coating on one of the rock spires. We'll go on Tarzan's treehouse to get a better perspective. I'll zoom in. It's possible that the coating that they're adding to the concrete is a bonding primer. Concrete is porous, meaning that there are bubbles, holes, and tiny gaps in it. So a bonding primer is used to coat the surface of the concrete, filling in the bubbles, holes, and gaps to resist moisture and friction damage. If we slide to the left, we can see that concrete has been added to the mesh forms on top of where the caves will be. If you look closely behind the trees, workers are adding detail to the concrete rock formations. Next, we'll go on the Disneyland Railroad to see this area from that perspective. And there it is. We'll watch it in slow motion. I'll pause the picture right here. We can see that a scaffolding screen has been put up, and if we move over just a little bit more, we can see some of the concrete that has been added to the rock formations. Next, we'll look at the developments of the village area from the top of Chippendale's treehouse. We can see that fiberglass sheathing wall panels are in the process of being installed to the structure in the middle of the picture. This is what the structure will look like once it's completely finished. These sheathing panels are specially designed to protect the wall assemblies against moisture intrusion. There is a mineral in these panels called gypsum that helps with moisture control and makes the panels highly mold resistant. And eventually, we will see these panels installed on other structures in the village area as well. Now looking to the right, workers are welding beams together on one of the dome top structures. As these workers continue to weld beams together, a worker on top of this structure is using a fully automated powder actuated tool. This is basically a roof nail gun used to nail sheet metal to steel beams. Next, we'll go back to the Mickey and Friends parking structure. Inside the Battle Escape Show building, a new beam structure is being made. It looks like at this point, a little less than half of it has been built. Let's do a flashback to see how this area has changed over time. This is what the area looked like on April 4th, and only the steel base structure was in place. On April 14th, we saw that a structure was built on top of the base. Megan and I believe that this structure is part of the framework for one of the two spacecrafts that they're making, as seen here. Then, on April 22nd, it was observed that the structure was removed from the base. And back to today, and as mentioned before, another beam structure is being constructed. Less than half of it has been made so far. Now if we compare the two beam structures to each other, the one that was completed on April 14th to the one that's partially built today, we can see that the two structures are going to be identical to each other. I'll highlight the beams that are located in both pictures. The beams are aligned and positioned exactly the same. However, the one that was constructed in April has paneling between the beams. And if this paneling wasn't there, we would see that this beam is connected to the top. It is possible that both beam structures were built on the base structure to compare beam alignment. It will be interesting to see if this new beam structure will be removed as well after it's fully constructed. I guess we'll just have to wait and see.
Today is May 12th, 2018.
Workers are continuing to weld mesh forms together for the rock formations. Now looking in the Battle Escape Show building, the second structure has been removed from the base. It is possible that after the beam alignment was confirmed, the second structure was taken off just like the first one was. And this will allow easier access to transport equipment and supplies into the cylindrical room. Next, if we look to the left of the Millennium Falcon Show building, a truck is transporting in Millennium Falcon hallway segments. I'll go ahead and zoom in. Notice the hole near the top of one of the segments. We've seen this type of hole before. We'll view a picture that Disney released, and this picture shows what the hallway will look like once it's completely finished. And here's an example of one of the holes that we're viewing from the segment located in the truck. Now a worker is moving the segment to align it with the telehandler for lifting. As they get it ready, a crane is lifting two segments in a lifting cage to be put inside the Millennium Falcon show building. They're being lowered into the building. Now if we look back at the truck, a telehandler is lifting segment panels out of the truck. It's being put into the lifting cage along with another segment. As the telehandler goes back to transport another segment, the two segments in the cage are lifted. We'll go on Donald's boat and Mickey's Toontown next. Notice that there's a new beam structure. The location of this beam structure can be recognized on the model. Behind this new beam structure, more Millennium Falcon hallway segments are being transported to the show building. And here's some more. Next, let's see what has changed from the top of Chippendale's treehouse. We can see that a new tapered beam structure has been made. Let's view the model to see what this will eventually look like. If we pan to the right, more framing has been added to this dome top structure. Over here, in front of the building with the gold sheathing, we can see that a new beam structure is being constructed. And this is what the building will look like once it's completely finished. And here, a worker is welding beams of the building. Alright, moving along, we can see that sheet metal is in the process of being installed on this dome top structure. And if you look closely, you can see a worker welding the sheet metal to a beam.
Today is May 19th, 2018.
Workers are continuing to weld the mesh forms together. Let's go ahead and look at the model to see what this area will look like once it's completed. Now, if we look inside the Battle Escape Show building, we can see what appears to be parts of the attraction set pieces. I'll zoom in. At this angle, we can definitely recognize what we're seeing. This is the same set piece that we saw at nighttime back in April. It has a first order look to it. We'll look at some pictures from a couple of the Star Wars movies that resembles this. This picture is from A New Hope, and notice the lights next to the door. This one is from A Force Awakens, and notice the lights on the left of the picture. This is definitely part of the First Order set that we'll be experiencing in the attraction. That is really cool. Now we'll look to the left of the Millennium Falcon show building. More Millennium Falcon segments have arrived, and they're getting them ready to be transported into the building. This segment that they're lifting looks different from the other segments that we've seen in the past. When it rotates, we'll get a better view of it. That is really cool. Now it's in the lifting cage and it's being lifted. Next, we'll go into Critter Country. In the distance, we have a view of the structure that's on top of the Battle Escape. It looks like a door has been added. This is what it looked like on April 28th. Now if we look a little bit to our right, more Millennium Falcon hallway segments are being lowered into the show building. Next, we'll go on Donald's boat in Mickey's Toontown. More Millennium Falcon hallway segments are being lowered into the show building. We'll continue watching more of the segments being lowered. Next, we'll get a view of the village area from the top of Chippendale's treehouse. In the distance, we can see that a coating has been added to the gold sheathing. This coating will provide secondary moisture protection to the building. It's a flexible coating that seals small cracks and penetrations. Also, it provides a very high level of airtightness as well. This dome has more sheet metal on it since last week. Now we'll pan to the left. A new dome top structure has been added to the building to the left center of the picture. Now we'll look at the model to see what this structure will look like once it's completely finished. I'll zoom in. If we do a side-by-side comparison of the model with the actual structure, we can see that the lines on the dome are the same.
Today is May 24th, 2018. The weather's like Dagobah conditions.
Yes, it is wet and a lot of moisture in the air. And it's raining off and on. However, despite the weather, there's a lot of workers here today. If we look inside the battle escape, framing is being put up next to the cylindrical room. Here's some workers going over what needs to be done. If we get a different angle, we can see that additional beams have been put up near the side of the building closest to us. Next, we'll go to the top of Chippendale's treehouse. One thing we didn't mention last week is that it looks like another dome top structure has been brought in as well. Now, if we look to the left a little bit, a crane is lifting a beam. The beam is being lowered next to the structure with the sheathing added to it. We believe this beam will be used to create a rock spire. And the rock spire we feel it'll be used for is this one. However, this could be a petrified tree. Actually, a petrified tree is a type of rock spire since it's a tree that's turned into stone. But anyway, this rock spire or petrified tree, depending on what you want to call it, is adjacent to this building. The building that the sheathing has been added to. And this is right next to where the beam was lowered. We feel that the beam will eventually be placed on top of this framework where the rock spire will be located. Alright, now we're in critter country. Workers are adding detail to the rock formations. This worker is adding concrete. And if you look closely, you can see the rain coming down in the foreground. Here comes an Imagineer. I believe this Imagineer is adding white or gray oxide to the surface of the newly added concrete for color and texture. Now brown pigment powder is being added. Now if we look up a little bit, workers are adding detail to the surface of the spire. Next, we'll take a trip on the Mark Twain riverboat. Behind the trees, we can see the top of the Battle Escape show building. And this side of the building still needs mesh forms to be added. Let's go ahead and look at this area on the model. Alright, I'll highlight in yellow the area that still needs mesh forms to create the rock formations. As we can see, they still have a portion of the building to be covered with mesh forms, but it's coming along and it's moving fast. Notice this rock spire. We can recognize the spire's framework on top of the show building. And here it is. Moving along, we can see that the workers are continuing to work on the rock formations. And if you look closely, you can still see that it's raining. The detail that they're adding to the rock formations is incredible. It's really looking nice. Well, that's a taste of things to come.
We can't wait to see what they'll build next.